Good evening, everybody out there on the interwebs. This is the Oddball Show, and I am Scholar, aka Ivan De Jesus, representing JP Line Productions. Joined by tonight, my bandmate Professor Chris
Hello.
Everson, and of course Mr. Chad Parenteau and Mr. Jason Wright from Oddball Magazine / Stone Soup Poetry. We're going to speak to them in a little bit about an incident that occurred this past Monday night at the Stone Soup Poetry reading. And I'm also very elated, very happy to welcome our special guest tonight, Mr. Elaine Davis. Elaine is a good friend of the Oddballs, a good friend of mine. We've been buddies for a long, long time. He's a man whose views I respect a ton and who I've learned a lot from over the years. He's on tonight because he's somebody that I consider to be a modern-day civil rights activist. He's very much into societal change and fighting the power, to use a Chuck D public enemy terminology. We're going to speak to him a lot tonight about some of his views on what's going on, not just in Baltimore, but also in our country as a whole over the past 20 months or so. Tonight is our second Baltimore and Beyond podcast. We had one a little earlier in the week with Dr. Chris Paddock, who's a resident of Baltimore and also a good friend of the Oddballs in the Line. And we got some really good discussion going on about what's going on from his perspective as a resident of Baltimore over the past couple of weeks, and the uprising, the riots, maybe not so much riots. We got into some pretty good discussions as to whether or not what the media is portraying as mass rioting and this very major upheaval, was it more of a series of isolated incidents that crested into what ultimately became all the fire and all the looting and everything that we saw on TV. So we had some really good discussions about that, and we'll use that as a springboard for the larger discussion tonight. But that having been said, as I mentioned earlier, we did have a race-related incident. I'll just say it, a race-related incident over at the Stone Soup Poetry reading this past Monday night. And whereas I want the focus of the cast tonight to really be on issues such as racism in America and beyond, police brutality, classism, poverty, economy and crime, privilege, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to get to all that. I think it's a good place to start. With the Stone Soup Poetry reading, given that we did have that incident, and to some extent, to a large extent, I would argue, it was definitely rooted in race and rooted in all of these issues that we've been having over the past couple of months. I read a poem, and a couple of other people read poems that night that indirectly or directly had to do with a lot of these race and police brutality type issues that have been steadily in the media seemingly over the past 20 months or so. And one gentleman in particular apparently felt a little differently or didn't take too lightly to it. And I'm going to go ahead and pass the torch to Mr. Chad Parenteau. And just let him speak on it for a second. Chad is he runs Stone Soup Poetry and has for a long time. So Chad, what happened, dude? Who was that guy? What went down? How did you feel about it?
Thanks, Scholar. I appreciate the very nice segue, the flattering segue. I especially appreciate you still talking to me after what happened on Monday. I know I wasn't responsible for it. I wasn't responsible for it directly, but being a host of a venue. Being a host of a venue like that, I sometimes feel like it is. But and it does. What happened on Monday definitely, I think, in a lot of ways ties into one of your themes tonight with that of privilege. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately. I didn't like the term privilege or Czech privilege or white privilege. I thought it was too much of a catchphrase. But I'll have to tell you something. After the events that happened back in March that we talked about in the very first Oddball Show, and what happened this past Monday, I get it. I get it very clearly that what happened was kind of to back it up a little bit for those of you.
Tell us what happened. Tell us what happened.
Well, in a nutshell, we've had this guy. We don't want to say his name, but I used to nickname him the Crusty Curmudgeon, and he was a bit of one. But I used to say it. Yeah, it sounds funny now, but I used to say it humorously because he could be a bit of a rancor, and I tried to present that in an endearing way. And he had a history of reacting not so well to the increasing number of poets who would talk about race, and these poets were, by no coincidence, black poets. And Stone Soup, in the first few years of my hosting it, had a very, very predominantly white male audience. It took me about 8 or so years to actually introduce, more female readers and more female open micers, where in an environment where they didn't at first feel comfortable. Over the last year, we've had quite a change in the makeup of the audience, in that, a lot of weeks, and Jason can vouch for this, has been if not equally white and black audience, mix of audience has been, sometimes in some cases, predominantly black, and even in some cases predominantly female.
I felt like it was predominantly black this past Monday, or
Well, I thought it was actually a really an interesting mix of both male, female, old, young, black, and white. Like that, it was, and you ended up with a group that all came in, about halfway through, that kind of swayed it in a mostly black way. But it was really, I think Monday night was a pretty good example of what you're talking about. It was a good mix.
Thanks, thank you. I do appreciate
white, black, male, female, and the one racist.
And also old.
And racist, not racist.
Well, Jason was. I think Jason just said and old, but I don't want to make it sound like it's
and old and young, Chad. I'm just saying it's
old, young. There was. How old are you? I don't know how old.
Sorry, there was. You had the black poets, white poets. You had old poets, young poets, new poets. We had poets there, man, and one person flipped their lid.
And it was someone who has had a problem with a particular poet, and I'd like to get him on the show, so I'll say his name because he didn't do anything wrong. His name is Jonathan J. Joseph, and even though
Secret J,
and I do much shout out to Jonathan J. Joseph, and even though even though he went out, even though he wasn't called out, I know for a fact that this individual who walked out in a violent tizzy, I'll just say, he had heard Jonathan J. Joseph before and walked out on him before.
Yep.
And Jonathan J. Joseph likes writing about race, but not that he wasn't being provocative with his language and talking about race relations between white and black. He does that every time he goes up to the mic. You would agree, Jason?
Yeah, I agree. I'd also agree that he's quite passionate and a hell of a writer. I totally agree with. I guess we could talk about what happened the first time, should we, Chad?
Well, there's not much to say except for the first time he talked about it. It was during the things were at a kind of a tension height at the time because it was shortly after the Ferguson. It was either just before or just after the Ferguson verdict.
And Jonathan J. Joseph was talking about police brutality, and this poet got mad because he's like, my father was a cop or something like that, and he got really mad. But that's not the issue. The issue is that, it is the issue, but the issue is that this poet, he's got some stuff going on,
Well, he was making an interesting point that, as misguided as it was pretty specific, and that was the thing when he got up. So he immediately followed Joseph, right? I'm pretty sure.
This second time, this past Monday, yeah.
And so when he
didn't follow him directly, he came shortly afterwards.
And so when he got up and he started, very exuberantly talking about it, I think everybody in the room thought he was performing. I think they thought he was launching into something that was a little pointed, but at first it seemed like it was going to be a performance piece, and then it seemed like it was just a full-on attack. And Ivan was sitting like dead middle of the room.
Yeah. If I can chime in. Yeah, if I can chime in. So at that point in the night, I had moved up to the front row, and he came up, and to be as brief as I can be, dude got up there and basically started shouting at the top of his lungs. Now, you guys out there in the interwebs, you have to picture like an old, probably about 5'7", 5'8", maybe 5'9", white dude with a gray mustache and kind of like I don't know, what kind of suit would you say he had on, Chad? Like,
definitely Bohemian style, if I had to give a classification.
Exactly.
He said he had just gotten back from a long trip.
Right.
From San Francisco or something.
So he was definitely, yeah, and he kept saying all the way from San Francisco. He was coming from San Francisco. God knows what the hell he meant. Isn't he from the North Shore? In any event.
But he does travel. But I don't want to get into that too much and reveal him to too
Right.
many people. I mean, people who are there know who it is. People who are regulars at Stone Soup can figure out pretty easily who this is.
So he gets up there, and to Chris, to piggyback on what Chris was saying, he immediately just starts yelling at the top of his lungs.
White people are
bitching.
persecuted too. White people are persecuted too.
White people were persecuted too. Stop bitching. White people were in the ghetto too. The Jews were in the ghetto too. Black people need to stop bitching. Angry white people need to stop bitching. Everybody needs to stop bitching. I'm worth $2 million. Like, he just kept going on. And you're right, Chris. I really did think that was part of the whole performance. So even though, like, he's literally yelling at me. Like, it felt like he was literally yelling at me because I was so close. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, did he take offense to my poem or somebody else's? And then I'm like, no, this just has to be a performance piece. This was only my second Stone Soup. So, I didn't have much of a basis to go on for me to believe that it wasn't part of some grander performance, but then it just got to the point where he never even got behind the podium. He was like standing beside the podium yelling all these things.
Very confrontational.
Very confrontational, very combative. One of the poets got up and left, a black woman. She got up and just kind of went outside, and at that point it just kind of, it was a downward spiral from there. And I think he realized that nobody in the room was feeling what he was trying to accomplish, whatever that may have been. Yeah. And then he got combative about that. Oh, I'm not leaving. You're a racist. You're a racist. He started calling everybody racist, and at this point,
let's be specific here. I mean, first of all, that happened. The impetus for like his escalation was the fact that Jason had confronted him and actually used the term racist to him, and then he actually pointed at the audience and said black racists, and
that's right, and that's when people got up,
and that's when there was a collective, oh hells no you didn't. I mean, I forget who it was. I think it was one of the JP Lime crew, Ivan, that said, oh my god, that was worse than the N-word. To call me a racist.
Yeah, no, it was our bandmate Spaceman, to his credit. And at that point, Mr. Kogan Johnson, Spaceman, shout outs to Spaceman if you're out there listening. At that point, said poet, who still remains nameless, and I guess we'll keep it that way for the night. At this point, he had walked over to the back of the room. And where Kogan was sitting alongside, Professor and our JP Lime brother. Actually, Chris's brother, Professor's brother, Steve Everson, who was there, a cowboy, and he started, black racist this and yada yada yada, and Kogan was like, no, he wasn't having any of it. Kogan, at that, I wouldn't say it became a shouting match, but Kogan got vocal, and then I don't know how you managed, or you and Jason collectively managed to diffuse that situation as best as you guys could. I thought at the end of the night you did a good job. Getting him out of there and, allowing the night to proceed, however tense the night became after that, which I felt really bad for everybody who had to read after that, especially, God bless her heart, I forget her name. Chris, help me out.
Yes. Dita Galloway.
Yes, who
she's awesome. I like her.
Just a sweetheart, has some very great poetry, but like everything after that was just a shit show. It was a shit show, and it was all rooted in this guy's central belief, apparently, and I'm guessing, I can't speak to him, but based on the quote-unquote performance that he gave to us, this guy honestly believes that the issues that, black people, minorities, poor people, but it seemed to me like it was an attack on black people. Maybe that's too harsh, maybe not, I don't know, it's debatable. That's what it seemed to me. But he seems to feel that black people really do just need to stop bitching. Everything, all of their issues were, all of their issues went away hundreds of years ago with slavery, and a few decades ago with the civil rights movement. Everything's all good. Stop bitching. If the Jews and white people who were from the ghetto and persecuted can make it, and make the kind of money that he's made, why not everybody else? And that seemed to be where he was coming from. And I'm thinking, well, are the Jews still persecuted? At least in this country. Are white people still in the ghetto, at least in this country? And I know I'm generalizing. I know there are plenty of poor white folks. I know everybody has their own struggle. I don't want to come across as sounding ignorant, but let's be real about it. There's a markedly different struggle in 2015 between Jewish people, white folk in America as a whole, than black folk. And I'm going to say black folk, not even just minorities, because I feel as though Latinos and Asians and other minorities, yes, we all have our own struggles, but I mean, I'm just going to say it, black folk have it the worst in this country. Black folk have it the worst in this country, and this dude was not trying to hear any of that. I mean, Elaine, can you chime in? I think this is a great time for you to chime in. And just tell me how you feel about that. You weren't there. We've painted the picture as best we could. What's up? What's on your mind?
Well, from the beginning, just to start off, I think it's really important to understand how we talk about race, like how uncomfortable we get when we talk about race. Any one of you could have made a black joke, and I don't think it would have been that uncomfortable knowing me. But to say somebody might be racist is more uncomfortable to talk about than to actually be racist. And I think the language is a huge part, like how we converse about race, or how we don't converse about race, is so important because it's such a scary topic to bring up. And I think that's part of the big issue, is how cautious and apologetic we have to be when we're addressing it. And another thing I wanted to say before we get too deep is that I think we are all racist. I think everybody on this podcast right now is racist, and that scares people. But I include myself, because I don't think you can grow up in a country that was it didn't just like get a lot of stuff that it has because of racism. It was found. All the good things come out of racism. When we talk about our economy was built on racism. Our army was built on racism. Like, so we have to talk about how deep it gets, and if we don't understand that it's all around us, racism, sexism, homophobia, like we're all that. I still have a different idea about, I still have to remind myself, about not judging black people. And I'm black and I'm pro-black, like extra midnight. But it's just part of our culture, and if we are so scared to address something that's so deep inside of us, and we think that if somebody's a racist, then they're automatically like small mustache Hitler skinhead caricature of a racist, then we're never going to get anywhere, because that's not what racism is. A racist dude doesn't mean it's a bad person. He can be a good father, good brother, good worker, good friend. Doesn't mean that person's not racist, because so we have to change the conversation, and maybe this guy had a bad day and he's a great guy every other day, but the guy is a racist.
Here, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna, Al. I'm really glad that you said the we are racist commentary there, because when Spaceman, when our bandmate Kogan and the poet in question were kind of having that, oh, you can't be calling everybody racist, that's worse than the N-word. At this point, I was just kind of like, what the hell is going on? But my immediate reaction after hearing that was like, I think at one point, I don't know if it was Kogan, but it might have been him, but he said, if you're not a racist, or if you're a racist, if you're not a racist, raise your hand, or something like that. And everybody raised their hand, and I kind of half put my hand up just to not be that guy. But I'm thinking everybody in here is a racist. I'm thinking everybody in here has a hint of racism in them, just because we're living in this country, but I think that's just a global thing. I think people are generally more comfortable within their own race. I think people generally give passes to and preferences to their own race. I think it's important for people to realize that, and to not allow that kind of behavior to get wrapped in a whole power structure so that an entire people are, oppressed, persecuted, et cetera, et cetera. But I think you're absolutely right, Elaine. We do have to change the conversation and change how we think about that. Everybody is uncomfortable talking about race, especially, or I don't want to say especially in America. That's just my experience. In America, people seem to be uncomfortable talking about race, and that's one of the biggest roadblocks that we're having in this country as far as affecting change on issues such as police brutality, on issues like black folk being disproportionately jailed and disproportionately stopped and frisked and disproportionately, not granted jobs because they were disproportionately stopped and frisked, and then you got the whole downward spiral of poverty and crime, and you know what I mean. It's just to get over those humps, we need to just accept, hey, everybody's a little racist. We can't allow that type of behavior to fuck people, to fuck an entire people. We can't allow that. But I know a lot of people have things to say. So go ahead.
Well, first of all, I wanted to speak on the previous comment about maybe a racist can be a friend, and that kind of chimes into the unspoken question as of yet as to why I'm keeping this person anonymous. Is that this person was a supporter and someone who I was friendly with for quite some time. I mean, if I were to give you the person's name now and you did a Google search, you'd probably find a bunch of YouTube videos of him performing at Stone Soup. He was someone who I would have considered to be called close to the group. I think Jason would agree as well.
I would agree, actually.
Which makes this very tragic, especially in the events over the last couple of months, in which we've had a larger proportion of black and female readers in the audience, and people have been reacting to that. In some cases, I think there's been absences, but it's hard to quantify that. But what's not hard to quantify is that we've had two reactions on two separate occasions. We've had that individual who is no longer with us because I asked him to apologize for his comments during the VCR reading, and the person who spoke out this past Monday, he wasn't even there for the first event, but it was like it's like he somehow knew what the first person was saying, and he almost became a dark parody of that. He upped the ante, and it was crazy anger. And the one thing that hasn't been said is that he was attacking people, but he didn't really have anything to attack. The reason I brought up Jonathan J. Joseph's poems and tried to describe it a little bit is that his words were not. They were provocative, but they were not confrontational of anyone in that audience, or even white people in general. I mean, I know innocuous can have connotations that his poetry wasn't effective. It was effective, but he wasn't calling out anybody. And believe me, I've heard and read my share of call out verse. That was not it. And what I think happened this past Monday, and what's probably happened on smaller and larger scales, has been a reaction to. Noam Chomsky had a quote about how the status quo, reacts even to like the smallest bit of, rebellion or insurrection. And I don't know if I would call what happened, the two nights people reacted insurrection, but it is against the status quo of what Stone Soup has been for a long time and what it was when I took it over. It was a safe haven for a certain level of thinking and for, a certain class and a certain race. And in a way, it's almost we've talked about safe spaces on this show, and I'll just say this, it kind of almost gives a weird, fucked up warning to like any one place that wants to be a safe space, because I'll say this, Stone Soup for a lot of people, and Jason, you can strike me down, was the ultimate white male safe space. And for a long time, and it started to wean away. I don't want to make me sound like I'm a fucking pioneer. I just brought my friends over and wanted to have who I wanted. But even that was just outrageous to people. And
I think that deserves a clap.
Can I speak?
Clap sound, Jason.
Don't clap.
Oh, wait.
It does deserve a clap.
I think you may not want to call yourself a pioneer. Maybe that's not the right term, but I think that's fantastic. If you can point to yourself and others can point to you as when that all white male environment started to change and to be more inclusive, that's fucking awesome, and that deserves a clap. Anyway.
I see where this is going. Someone had to use the sound effects, but on a serious note, and then I'll let Jason step in. What's that? Oh, but I just wanted to say that I absolutely, Jason. But what I wanted to say was I want to give more credit to the people who have not only started to come to Stone Soup, the men and women of various races who have various diversity who have come to Stone Soup, who have not only started to come there but have endured this and are going to keep on coming back after shit like this happens. I mean, that there's a level of bravery and perseverance there that I don't have to endure in my day-to-day. I endure different things, but I don't endure that. I mean, Didi Delgado was there. Didi Delgado, a past co-host of this, a guest of this show, was there in the audience when that happened. And she's hosting the reading for next week, after having seen all that. So I have to give more credit to that than I ever could for me. I'm sorry, I'll give it over to you, Jason.
Well, can I say something quick? Oh, no.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing that you were saying, Chad, is about it being tragic. I think that might be an issue because I really don't think it has to be tragic. In my experience, when somebody goes off the wall and puts it all out there like that, it's a perfect time to engage them in dialogue, especially if they're your friend and they're good people, and you know they're good people, because then you can talk and just spit facts and talk. I usually find that once somebody's riled up and they just let everything out and everything's on the table, that's when it's time to change your mind, or at least affect some sort of just put some knowledge on their plate. So
yeah, and that's probably yeah.
And I just want to start off by saying, he was erratic on stage, and I was outside, and someone came out to me and said, this guy's acting a little weird. I didn't really hit. He's like, he's acting all crazy, and then I walked inside. I heard him ranting, and I was the one who called him a racist, and that's my bad. I said, please leave. You're being a douche and being racist, is what I said.
So we should have kicked you out.
So you should have kicked me out, because first of all, I said you're being a douche.
Pissed him off even more.
So I pissed off.
I'm kidding.
No, I swear to God, no, I'm serious. So what I feel I did was I incited this because I was trying to get him off the stage when I hadn't even heard all of it. You know what I mean? I was outside. I heard that there was something going on. I walked inside, heard it, saw him ranting. I was like, oh man, this dude's ranting again. And I was like, I gotta get him off stage. And in my anger at what I was listening to him, because he was still going, I started throwing around like, you're being racist and a dick. Get off the stage. And I shouldn't.
But you know what, man? That's what it felt like, man. I was there. That's what it felt like to me. It felt like he was being a racist dick. I mean, Chris, at one point, didn't he come up to you and almost try to find solace in you or something?
Right,
and it was just about you, right?
He was just kind of bouncing around the room at the end, and he did say something, and I just said, you have nothing to talk to me
about. Can I address one real quick thing about this dude?
I think we should move on from this dude, but yes, let's keep
2 seconds. Okay, this dude has been around for a long time. He's been a faithful Stone Souper. He was definitely not in his. I mean, I'm not gonna make any excuses for him, but this is all I know for a fact that he was not in his right mind. He came up to me and said, "I'm worth $2 million," and he was wearing like a zoot suit and a Panama Jack hat. He was not right in the head. He was not right.
No, I agree. I agree, and I think you're right, Chris.
He just went off the rails, and I think that has to do with the way he was. I mean, he was not in his right head, and honestly, I feel bad because I like that guy. He was a nice guy, and I honestly, I really should have just handled the situation better, and just like when Spaceman was talking, he was like, "Let's start a dialogue," and I'm the one, because he was like trying to like get him to talk, which just like Alain was saying, and I totally agree. We should have had some kind of conversation, but we are at an open mic.
And I was gonna say,
That wasn't the time and place to talk, and I think
it was completely ridiculous.
He didn't incite anything. He incited you respond, and the response is not the starting point.
Right.
And Jason, emotions were very high, and I think they have been very high because of a lot of things happening inside the open mic area and outside the open mic area in the outer world. And if you were overly emotional, my friend, you were in good company because I wasn't much help when I was trying to calm down the audience. You might have heard me outside from the inside yell something like, "I'm upset too!" It was. It was.
You woke up Central Square, man.
Tempers were high all around, and people kept on going to the poor guy, like to almost, unintentionally provoking him when I just wanted him to have him walk away because we needed to calm down. We needed to find a level of calm, and it was very tough to do that. And I could never have him back unless he apologized, because
Well,
I just can't have that.
I think we should have a dialogue with him because
I would like to.
I honestly
Yeah.
do believe he's a nice guy. I think he was. I don't want to say anything, but I think he was having issues. He was up. He was very hyper. He was whatever. He was kind of out of his mind. And I think given the opportunity, because like he's not only friends with Dita, because Dita knows he's just acting up. You know what I mean? Because Dita Galloway is like one of the nicest people in the world, and she's like it's just him being he's just kind of not in the right head.
Well, that's an interesting overall point that you guys are making. He's a nice guy. He had a bad day, and his bad day kind of
Brought some
manifested
things
itself.
out of his head. Brought those things out of his head into the forefront.
Right. But I mean, it came out very. I mean, to me, it came out racially.
Yeah.
Or there was a lot of privilege and a lot of racism, in what went down. And I'm not saying that he's. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the guy. You guys know him better than I. But yeah, I want to ask Elaine: Is sympathy a strategy for combating racism?
No, it's a product of racism.
It's a product. Explain that. What do you mean?
Yeah.
It's a product. It goes into the trying to you're protecting racism, and it's hard to do because it's hard to separate the idea of racism and what we know, like how much damage it's done from a good person. And I tell my friends on social networks, just because somebody's spouting race, if you were their friend before, they still have all those good things, but they just are also raised, and that's what it's a set of behaviors. It's not a characteristic. It doesn't define you. It's a set of behaviors that you learn, that that you're nurtured into from our American society.
So what about that notion of stop bitching? Because he kept. I mean, those are the words that in my mind, he's the stop bitching guy. That's that was my big takeaway from it.
Well, every once in a while there is a time when people need to stop bitching, depending on what the topic is. But that's what Du Bois, W.E.B. called double consciousness. You're not sure whether something's racist or not, and sometimes it's not, and you're bitching, and and you're missing the point. But overall, it just doesn't take into in the history into context. The Jews, Germans, Irish were all given land. They were given tax breaks. There were loans denied in places that black people couldn't live. Even now, there's places you can't get loans. So there were purposeful things in place, that make this happen, and it's on purpose. It's not like an accident. Racism is this thing. I know we have tribalism, and people talk about that, but that wasn't happening for years. It was, racism was invented, and the institutions that were built up in order to keep racism going and to keep slavery going and to keep a certain people down and keep a certain people up. A lot of those systems are still in place, and we call them, we call it tradition, we call it, our history, but some parts of history we got to let go. But,
Which,
go ahead.
Which systems, how many of those systems do you think were at play in Baltimore?
All of the quality of life systems, healthcare, education, employment, economics, anything where you can qualify the quality of life. Black men today live worse than most third world countries. If you talk about
black men in America,
black men in America, life expectancy, education,
health,
incarceration, health, all of those. So we have to. So if you say, well, maybe if they do this, maybe if they just do that, you're saying that there's something inherent in blackness that makes them not want to do that. And that in itself is racist. So there has to be more. And we have to talk about the system and the behaviors that we have to break, Yeah.
I feel that. What are people thinking? What's up? I got a lot to say. I mean, Alan and I can go back and forth. Elaine and I can go back and forth. I apologize to everybody, to Elaine, and I'll explain to everybody out there on the internet. I've been calling Elaine Alan forever. We go back, to middle school, I want to say, and the correct pronunciation of his name is actually Elaine, Mr. Elaine Davis. So I apologize when I just spout out Alan there without
No, that's fine. You can go.
Yeah.
I just learned that, by the way.
I was kind of wondering myself with the back and forth.
Yeah, and that's just one of those things.
I was looking for a sixth member on the Hangout, so I was like, what?
It's a habit. It's a hard habit to break. But I mean, as far as those habits go, it's we're talking about racism, talking about quality of life, and just thinking about it along those terms. It's like, oh well, just stop bitching. Just stop bitching. Just do what we did. And like I said, when the idea of, oh, well, white people were persecuted too, the first thing that came to my mind is, like, well, are they still being persecuted, at least in America? Are you still oppressed? And again, I don't want to come across ignorantly, because I do understand that all races have their struggles, and all people there's variance within races, and there are plenty of poor white people out there that have it really, 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 really bad. But generally speaking, I don't think white people are losing in America.
The ones
am I wrong?
The ones who are don't know it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a big issue.
I'm going to speak on that for a second, and
please do.
I'd like to say, when I think about race and stuff, when I think about it, I try and now this is honest. This is me being honest. I think I'm a writer. So if someone is a writer who's also who's a writer or a poet or an artist, I try and look. I just seem to look past race or ethnicity, sexual orientation, anything, and I go for the talent of the writer. Does that sound weird? Because that's kind of how I feel. Like I try and not look. I try and not look at race, and more like I don't know. I'm a poet. I like poets and artists and writers. That's kind of my thing. And also I love people who have mental disabilities. So I gravitate to those kind of people, and just in that sector, there's millions of people who fall under that category of mental illness, and that's where I show compassion. It's kind of weird. I guess I don't understand exactly let's
go back to this idea of everybody is a racist. Let's jump back, because that's where I think that's kind of a little bit of what Jason was just saying. Everybody is a racist, and I've heard that isn't the first time I've heard that idea. And I think that racism is far more widespread, and it's why we're so shy to talk about it, is because we know so many people that are actually, racist. That just outright think differently about people of other races. And that to me is a difference between, we're a country of many races, and so it's impossible not to be racial, not to recognize race. You can't be blind. It's not that's a silly idealistic idea. But being racist to me is something different, and it's a very real, it's a scary reality in 2015, because it shouldn't be as widespread as it is. But I have friends my own age, not even just my parents' age, and people that it was the generation before. People my own age who will say something like, Jesus, you have some weird concept about people of different races, that they are not, just innately you think they are not the same as you. And that's what, to me, comprises racism, is that, whether you act on that, whether you get angry about that, whatever you do, if you somehow think that someone of a different race is just different, like they're not the same, they're not a full person, that's the basis of it to me. And it then goes on to support all the industrial and economic things that we were just talking about, that, it's okay to arrest these people, they're not the same as me, they're not, whatever. Then all that other stuff is built on top of that. But that to me is a basis of racism. And I think that's different than recognizing race and having racial concepts. But let's talk about that a little bit.
Idealistic? Is it wrong to believe that you can look through the color of someone's skin or whatever, by the quality of their work?
Well,
is that weird?
To me,
does that sound weird? I mean, all I'm saying is that's how I look at life. I look at life as writers and people who write. That's just.
I would think the argument against separating that, Jason, is that so much of a work and of works life is like they say. Even like the work that is not political is political in itself because you're expressing identity,
Right.
coming from a certain perspective. So I think it's very hard. I mean, we say we want to separate the work from the individual, but in some sense we can't do that.
Yeah,
Like,
and I think
could you really separate? Could you really separate? Say, I hate bringing him up. I wish he was here, but could you separate Jonathan J. Joseph's work from his actual
Right.
being, or Didi Delgado's? You know,
And I think that's a thing. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Chad, but I think you're making a great point. I think it's something that it's the danger that we as liberals do is we try to be too blind to say that it doesn't exist. You know, everybody's exactly the same. Well, you're not. Your race and your culture and your background informs who you are and who informs part of your identity. That needs to be recognized in order to fully have a real full conversation about race. It doesn't. You can't just say it doesn't exist, and that's what
I'm
we're
not saying
saying.
that. Of course it exists.
Do you guys ever feel bad about it?
Saying. What's that?
Do you guys ever feel bad about, like, I'm asking
About
Chris,
white privilege?
Chad, yeah, I'm asking Chris, Chad, and Jason, because you're all kind of touching on it in different ways, and then I wanna ask Alan about it, in more general terms, and to speak on, how you guys reply to that. But it's just, Chris, you're telling me you hear sometimes people your own age who say some fucked up shit. Jason, you're saying I just see everybody as writers. Like, why do we have to? Well, no, it doesn't sound crazy, but it's almost like, Chris, you feel bad for your friend. Jason.
No, I don't. I don't feel bad at all.
Really?
I feel like yeah. I feel no. You mistake that.
Okay.
I don't feel bad at all. I feel like it's crazy, and that's a terrible part about my friend. That it's insane to me. Racism as a concept, to be able to believe in it is insane to me. Like that, you can look at another person and say, all right, because of whatever I think about your socioeconomic group, whatever I think about that, you are somehow less of a person. That to me is an insane concept. Even if you want to be angry, it doesn't make sense that you can actually believe it, and so many people do.
Have you ever felt white guilt in any context?
White guilt? Oh, all the time. All right, so my own experience, I grew up in Dorchester. I grew up, my summer camp was all Boston urban kids. I went to school in Mattapan. It wasn't until I got to RL that all of a sudden, like, I was not the minority. And,
So you get to prep for everybody out there on the interwebs. When Chris got to about 7th grade, 8th grade prep school?
Yeah, 7th grade, yep.
Gotcha. Okay. And that's
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
But, so my experience is, that I have had, friends of different races since a very young age. But then as you get older and you start to understand the role that race plays, of course you feel, white guilt is a very real thing. You can't help it. But it doesn't, I don't know. I don't hang out with Kogan and go, man, I'm just really sorry. I just feel bad. It's not the same.
That was me after the show on Monday. Kogan, I'm fucking sorry.
Well, that's it. But it's not, that's the thing. You can't, that's not, proper white guilt. And that exists. People do feel that. But proper white guilt is understanding the concept of what it is and trying to work towards something better and just really, getting it and saying, I have some concept of, the history that this country has gone through and the, crazy, terrible things that we've done that still exist, that inform systems that still exist today. I understand that, or I have some concept of that, and I can't do much myself. I can't pay you reparations, but I can at least be part of a conversation and an effort to advance us as a people and get,
I know, I hear you. And Chad, you felt bad for Kogan too, or you? I don't want to say felt bad for Kogan, but you were apologizing to Kogan. It sounded like.
I was apologizing to you. You were there. I was apologing to everyone that night.
Kogan is a black man, by the way, for everybody out there on the internet.
Green-eyed black man.
Yeah, the green-eyed black man. That's Baseman, Kogan, black man.
That's like a song from the 50s.
Yeah.
Green-eyed black man, oceans, black man. Yeah.
Just to give everybody some context.
Nature.
Chad just created the first track to Space's solo album. The 50s doo-wop song called Green-eyed Black Man.
And I sang. These are two firsts for the podcast. Jesus.
But yeah, but it sounds like you felt it. You felt a little bit of that. It's just like, oh my God, I'm running this show, and all of a sudden this guy spouting off on black folk, and there are black folk at the show who who I'm friendly with or friends with.
But
Yeah, I
me,
mean, this is
am I completely off? I mean, is this my ideology completely off? Am I making this make no sense at all?
No, you're making perfect sense. What I really want to get to is, Al,
It's flawed.
what do
It's
you?
not off. It's
Yeah.
flawed. Because it's
Wait,
flawed. It's just flawed thinking. We all have points where it's because when race,
I would agree it's flawed. Yeah.
people who are dealing with the repercussions of it, and they're saying it to you, and you say, "Well, I just don't see that." It's sort of ignoring their experience.
It's not that I don't see it.
Identity.
I see it. I see racism. I see it all around. But I like to feel that it can be beat through. I guess my point's off. I'm just trying to say that I see it. I see everything all around me. I just see that there is unity in writing, and it's I guess that's just my ideology. It's completely. It sounds stupid.
I don't think it's crazy or nearly as nuts as you're trying to make it out. Yeah, it's not crazy. It's just a little idealistic, and that's not a bad thing.
No.
Idealistic changes the world, man.
Especially when you see it, it's just when people. I think it's.
You don't ignore it.
Something that a lot of people are like, I just don't see race. Everything's like rainbow and Care Bears and unicorns.
No.
When you see it and you just see through it, then you're actively all the time denying racism. Not denying that it exists, but denying, like, allowing it to overtake your judgments and your actions. And so that's the necessary, that's what's necessary.
Is that willful ignorance, Al?
I have kind of like a weird
That's
way.
the opposite of willful ignorance.
Okay,
He's not
so
saying
explain
I
that.
don't see it. He's saying I see it. I see all around it, and I think the people who do it are fucked up. So what I'm gonna do, what I do is that I'm gonna see art, and I'm not gonna allow the race thing to come. I think
isn't that a good thing?
I think it's a great thing. I think it's somewhat impossible, but if you're actively always aware that it exists, but you're not going to allow it to exist within, and how you do your thing, then that's perfect.
I see it all around, man. I see people. I see racism, but I just see. I don't know. I have an ideology that just doesn't make sense.
I think it makes sense. The only thing that I would say is that it sounds like what you're saying, that writing can transcend the race, but I don't necessarily think that that's what. I mean, that doesn't mean your thinking is wrong, but what I think.
So it's just hard to change a whole world's thought,
Well, what I think you're actually doing, whether you're aware of it or not, Jason, is you're not necessarily transcending race in terms of what we're reading from people with Oddball or what we're listening to at Stone Soup or when we listen to JP Lime and other bands at a show, is that we're integrating the race. We're not ignoring it.
Yeah.
Because you can't ignore it, but you can actually engage it and acknowledge it.
You're using art and writing and poetry as a means of dealing with it. And recognizing it and dealing with it, and I would argue, making it better, because art and music and poetry, those are all things that people can unite around and rally around. Same with sports.
Oh, I'm just saying, I know a lot more cats because I know a lot more people because of their art than the color of their skin. You know what I mean? I don't know.
And I'm going to follow up. I'm going to follow up on what Jason said, because Jason introduced me to a lot of people, and for a while my biggest sin was ignorance, and in that, not that I wasn't aware of like the plight of racism, I knew that very well, but I never really had anyone personally to like talk and discuss this with. And part of that is just, really stems from the fact that, I was like a misanthrope for many years, so it was very hard for me to integrate myself with anyone. I was so in my own shell that I would go into a room with mixed races and everything, and all I'd say is, "Oh God, there's 30 people who are cooler than me." So in that way, my self-loathing may have, quote, transcended race, unquote. But but in a lot of ways, especially the last couple of months, I was also very non-confrontational. for like confrontation is like one big thing. You know, I tend to shy away from it, and that's a big character flaw of mine. You know, I tell people, you know, maybe the last time I had a real confrontation, I lost most of my life savings and went to court twice, you know, and was almost homeless. So that'll take the wind out of your sails for a while. But the last couple of times where I've had issues with this, I wasn't even really the one who confronted R. That was more Jason. And despite how Jason putting himself down, I give him credit for that. But but the one
Jason
thing
doesn't take any mess from anybody.
But to get to my point is that I've learned through friends like Dee Dee, Crystal, and other black friends I've just interacted with who have been amazing human beings in my life. I've learned kind of like the extra side effects of not being confrontational. I mean, I have a lot of racist people in my life right now where if I were to confront them all at once, I'd have a lot fewer Christmas cards to send out. I'll tell you that much. It would just be it could be disastrous, and it's something acting out of fear, perhaps that or not knowing how to react to it. I mean, my first reaction, you know, when the first person perpetrated his, you know, made a scene of himself in March, my first instinct was to like strangle him.
Yeah.
You know, that's not exactly productive, and that shows a lot of things that I have to learn about. So, I mean, I give Jason a lot of credit because it was, it has been a steep learning curve, and I do understand, you know, like Jason, I do understand Jason's point of view, and I think Jason's point of view is even more expanded than he even admits. It's something that I've had to learn a lot of like how to do, and I appreciate him for allowing me to do that, and for my new friends to allow me to do that as well. I'm sure they have to be just as they have to be as patient with me as I have to be with them. I'm sorry, Ivan.
No, I was gonna say, and I feel like I think we're having an excellent discussion, and I feel like what's happening here. I feel like what's happening here is we're trying to break down some of those barriers about race, and that's the point of this podcast. That was the point of the last podcast. Overall, at the end of the day, the biggest issue that we have as a country, if not as a people globally, is that we have trouble talking about these things. And am I being too passive? Am I being too aggressive? Am I doing enough? Am I even understanding it right? Is my thinking way off? Those are things that we often, toil with within ourselves, but we don't verbalize that to others for fear of that confrontation sometimes, Chad, which you speak of. And and that's a difficult thing to overcome. It's a very valid, very natural, reaction to not want to be confrontational, especially when it comes to, race-related issues in this country. But when we get to the point where police brutality, is occurring at seemingly, at very alarming rates. It's being displayed now at very alarming rates, but it's been going on for a while. It's just I think, most of us would agree that with social media and with cell phones and everything being so digital, it's coming out more now. So the mainstream media and the mainstream as a whole is having to deal with it now. But this has been going on for a long time.
They're beating up black folks like hotcakes.
Right. And if racism is the root of that, and other issues like that, then why aren't we talking about this despite our discomfort? I mean, what do you think, Al?
I just think we get used to being uncomfortable and talking about this thing because people are hurting and literally dying. People are not eating. People are suffering because we just don't want to feel uncomfortable. And it's not just white. But I have lots of black friends who don't come to me with that black shit. I don't want to hear that black shit. I just want to have fun. And anybody who knows me, I'm not non-confrontational. Put it lightly. So I like addressing those things at all times, but we just have to be able to deal with the discomfort of the change in the conversation and how we talk and how we do things. And there's no other way to do it.
Al, let me ask you about, because I know you very well, and when you say you're not confrontational, I would argue you're understating it. No, and I respect you for that, because I mean that's why I call you a modern day civil rights activist, because you see race and racism in a lot of situations that other people don't, and you deal with it often right then and there. And you're right, a lot of people do get uncomfortable, but at the end of the day, what you're doing is increasing the probability of some of those folks actually walking away with a positive and dealing with race later going forward. Some people are going to be dicks, and they're going to not absorb it the right way. But when it comes to dealing with that discomfort and being seen as confrontational, talk to me about a term like conspiracy theorist.
Oh, I love conspiracy theories.
Please talk to me about that, because a lot of people, and I'm not saying that your views are in line with what the mainstream population would consider to be conspiracy theorists like, but that's a term that's often thrown out there to discredit people, and I'm sure you've heard it yourself once or twice.
Yeah,
So talk to me about that.
there's race card, there's conspiracy theory, and it just is like the idea that a group of powerful people come together and plan out how to stay powerful is not absurd.
No.
It's just not absurd. Like, why? Like, JP Lime does that. Oddball magazine does that. Like, we do. That's how we work. So to think that's not that certain things are not happening. Like, why would people come together to and plan to take all of our money? It's so weird to think that we can't just drop that term. There's some conspiracy. There's some crazy things that are out there. The things that I won't even speak on that seem really weird to me, but I don't speak on them. But certain things is like oh, you always bring up the race card. It's like, it's not a race card. This is something I'm dealing with. I'm trying to figure out, because I'm living it
Every day.
Yeah, every single day. And your discomfort about talking about it, I'm not gonna be like, I always I tell my friends if they're going through some stuff with their girls or work, it's like, would you rather them be unhappy or yourself be unhappy? And for me, I'm selfish. I don't want to be unhappy, so I'm gonna deal with it right then and there, and I'm gonna bring it up. And you say it's the race card. It's like, no, I don't want to be uncomfortable, so I'm gonna tell you how you're making me uncomfortable, and it happens to be racial right now.
What about another term that you've used that I've studied a bit and I get it? Microaggression.
Microaggression.
Talk to me about microaggression in the media, and talk to me about the media in general and the media's role. I mean, let's speak on Baltimore a little bit. We are, this is our second Baltimore and Beyond cast. Microaggressive tactics by the media related to Baltimore. Go.
I think that two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
I think microaggression and what the media does. The media is corporate sponsored by the people who need certain systems to work. They need cheap labor. So you get all the classism. There's a lot to talk about, but I don't think those two are the same things. I think microaggression is what the normal type of racism you see, and it's still racism.
What's an example of microaggression?
Yeah, it's not a term I've ever heard. What does that mean?
That's a new one.
Microaggression is if you touch your black friend's hair. That's microaggression.
I totally get it.
Yeah, that's not.
That was like the perfect example. Like,
And-
oh, it feels so weird.
Exactly.
Yeah, many times and gone, what are you doing?
I can bring up another example. If they say you're well spoken as a black
Yes.
person.
Exactly.
That's a good one.
And your liberal friends will get offended if you call that out because they're like, 1 second, I do everything for black. I do this. I run a program. I got a not-for-profit. How dare? And it's one of those things, and it helps. But I think we do focus on those things too much in the media when we're really talking about, like, when we talk about racism, we're not talking about racism because I don't believe black people can be racist in how we talk about it, but I think we can be racist in, like, sort of the prejudice, sort of like the Webster's definition of it.
Is that the distinction? There's a power
Ooh, I've
element to
heard this
racism
before.
versus prejudice.
Power plus prejudice.
What's the difference?
There's actually a book out called "Why Are All the Black Kids in the Cafeteria," which someone I know has had to study to become a teacher, and in it, I have not read the book yet myself, but in it, the author claims that black people cannot be racist. They can be prejudiced. They can have prejudices, but racism is primarily a social construct.
It is a social construct, but I've been arguing with a lot of people who go to Webster's dictionary. So if you go to Webster's, black people can be racist, but we're not talking about racism. We're talking short for systematic racism, where when you have a certain belief, there's a system that backs it up. There's a system that shows you that blacks are more likely to be criminals because there's more of them in jail. You know, they are likely to be more violent because there are more of them that are poor, and poor people are more violent. So, you know, there's a system that backs up those ideas. The ideas in general come from the system, so it's a cycle. So, you know, you got to stop one to stop the other, but I think the more important thing is to stop the systematic part, the parts that affect the quality of life. Because I've played, I'm always around, like, some of my closest, I hate to say it like that, but, like, many of the people I talk to most openly are conservative Republicans. And I think just being able to be open with them about those things really helps me figure things out, because they're not the problem. It's when they get in power and they're running a job and they're trying to hire and they have those ideas and they start coming out subconsciously in how they hire people. And if they see Jamal instead of Chad on an application, that's when it becomes a problem.
See, but that's an excellent point. But I totally disagree. I mean, I'd say systemic racism is obviously the more tangible enemy. But I mean, isn't the bigger goal to battle racism at its core, rather than just when it manifests itself in a way that affects people, economically or job-wise or opportunity-wise, which obviously it does. When a racist white guy suddenly becomes the head of a company that he gets to make decisions about, Jamal versus Chad, then it really does affect people other than himself and other than the people in his inner circle. But really, shouldn't we be about trying to stop that guy from being a jackass?
No, you're getting it. It's backwards. I don't think you're disagreeing with me. I think you're just saying what I'm saying. But what the core is the system. He's like that because the system keeps showing him that.
That's interesting.
He's not wrong. Who's
I got you.
Who's the comic book guy here? Who's the fantasy guy?
I am very educated on comic books, which sounds like a contradiction. But continue,
Everybody but me, Alan. Everybody but me.
I sort of know comic books.
Yeah, well, just think in the fantasy world. Think about what we know from reading our books about, like, vampires and Dracula. If we seen them, we're going to want to stab them because we're like, they're going to eat us. So if all these people are seeing a certain thing because of the system, they're only doing what's natural, like what anybody would do, survival. The regular, like, Midwestern hillbillies, they watch the news, and that's one of the quality of life things, the media. They're watching the news, they're looking in their jails, they can go to any jail, and what they see backs up their point. So they're only doing what's natural. That's like instinct. That's how you survive.
See, that to me though is like the scary thing. I'm sorry to cut you off, but that the person I consider, I really like talking to him because we are so different, and it's like it's one of the few people I have like that. But I do consider him racist, and part of his experience is informed by jail, and he thinks that when you go into a system like that, when you go into jail, you just automatically go into your natural, or you tend to go into your natural system, which is to break up by tribe or by race. And he thinks that's a natural thing. He thinks that's what we are. We liberals on the other side of it are somewhat foolish for ignoring that concept that that's a natural thing rather than a enforced, like a nature versus nurture thing that it's informed by hundreds of years of white people colonizing and then power structures and then commerce and business and such.
Why can't it be both?
Well,
I think he's completely wrong. I think it's insane. I mean, I think we tend towards collectivism and towards clans and groups, but it isn't necessarily broken up along color lines. I don't think that.
Well, let's not forget that some of there was this comedian Patrice O'Neill who's who's dead now, and he actually had this great like analogy of jail, like saying there's no lone gunman in jail. If you're in jail, you gotta join something. You can't just be there. Oh, I'm just gonna sit here with my magazines. Well, you're not part of anything, so I'm gonna rape you. So you can't. It's if you can't. That was his quote, not mine. But in other words, how can you say it's like a natural thing if somehow the social construct forces you to either join or die?
Well, I think it's a natural thing that evolved into a social construct in some form within some tribes, and now the one feeds the other. I mean, if we're saying everybody can be racist or everybody's racist, or if we're gonna separate it, everybody can be prejudiced. Not everybody necessarily can be racist. The ones who took the prejudice and created racism, and then the system just kind of keeps feeding itself. Like, I don't think the two are mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Which one came first? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. You tell me. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's there. It's not going anywhere. We got to talk about it, right?
Yeah, the type of racism we know, only like color racism, only before slavery, only existed in India, in their caste system.
Really?
Everybody else, yeah. What do you think the people in Timbuktu were trading with Europeans? Why do you think Cleopatra and Anthony were together? Like, nobody was worried about that stuff. The only system, another system that had it, but it wasn't color-based, it was just like anybody who's not us, is the Greeks, the Romans, whatever. They thought everybody else was barbarians. But other than that, everybody was trading, everybody was doing, everybody...
Well, there was a certain point that we started that the European world started colonizing, and it wasn't just, America was the worst example of that, because then we started just, importing in mass, but...
You need an excuse. You need an excuse to gain power. These explorers, which were basically pirates, needed an excuse to get money from the queens and whoever they were. So it was created because of that. It wasn't like they decided like we're racist, so we're gonna go. They're like,
yes.
So we're like, we can't do this to these people. They're like, no, these are not even really people. They're like monkeys.
Right.
So and they started writing that down and telling them, exaggerating, putting them in zoos. These are not real people. They don't speak our language. They did it to the Native Americans.
That was Thomas Jefferson's one of the core things that he justified slavery. He envisioned man, and especially in America, as being this every man able to be a scholar and an innovator, inventor, plantation worker, and he was a big slave owner, and his big justification was at the time he said Negroes are not men.
And so
in a nutshell.
Elaine, your contention is that is just fed by the colonization period, or the beginning of the slavery period. That's fed by those systems. It's fed by systems and not by people thinking that other people are lesser, innately or in some way.
Because these systems were created, and in order to keep these systems in place, you have to keep those traditions up.
Yeah.
But a lot of them are just not necessary anymore, and we're hurting ourselves by maintaining them.
Yeah.
Carrying on tradition, Nas. Not Nas, Nas. I want to switch gears a little bit. I think we've talked about racism very, very productively, and I'm learning from each and every one of you. So Jason, don't for any moment think that your views are off or anything like that. Like, everything you say is education to me, especially in this forum. This is a great forum. But we're talking about race. We've talked a lot about race. I really want to hit on police brutality. Obviously, talking about racism, like I've said before, I firmly believe that's a very achievable, very strong, a thing that we can do to help the situation. But one of the problems that we have now is police brutality. Disproportionately affecting minorities, black men, poor people. How can we fix that? What measures can we put in place? I mean, we got to talk, we got to figure things out, we all got to come together as a people, but boom, we can't wait that long. Like, this shit is getting really, really bad. It's been really, really bad for a long time. What can we do?
What are people's thoughts on did Obama just start a national initiative that he's going to nationally take over police departments, right?
No.
That scares the hell out of me. I didn't know that. That scares the hell out of
Well,
me.
not like everywhere, but that's the
Really?
idea. There's going to be insight. There's going to be, everybody's going to be answerable to on a federal level. Every police department.
No, yeah. Where'd you read this at? This is like my dream.
No, this is hold on. Let me see if I can find it.
I'm looking too.
Yeah, I'm looking too.
Oh, shoot, it made news this
Someone
week.
check Snopes.
Snopes. I at least in an ideal kind of sense, the idea of a checks and balance system, because that's really where, to me, so much of this comes into play. That if you allow the people that are supposed to be the authority and keep us safe and who have so much power because we want to give them that power, if we just allow that to go on unchecked and allow the systemic racism that we've been talking about to just creep up and take over those systems, that's a big enemy to fight. And I don't know. I think accountability is probably like the first line of defense, but I don't know what you do after that. I really don't.
Well,
Like, how do you go in and just root it out? And it's gonna fight. So it's like a virus. It's like.
Well, accountability is huge. That's a big part. But you have to, I think, just the knowledge of history. I think people don't understand, like, our modern day American police system was built once again to catch slaves, to catch escaped slaves. Like, that was what the overseers. That was our origin of our police system. But like beyond that, to come back, it's very concrete. We have privatized prison systems which replace plantations, and we can't have privatized prison systems because then the product is people, and you got to put people in there. You got to put the poor people in there that can't afford to defend themselves. And then
like anything else you give to a free market or anything else you give to, it's subject to money. And if you're then what you're making into the product that you're selling for that money is people. And
the state, the city gets money from the state, and the state gets money from the federal government for the more people they arrest, the more people they put in jail.
Yeah, I read a blurb recently, and honestly, I don't know if it was a spoof site or not, but it could have been real, which is scary enough, where a prison or a group of prisons were suing the state, I want to say, because the prisons weren't full. Like, that's crazy to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's not the way it should work.
It's a for-profit business. It's the Prison Industrial Complex, the PIC.
And that's the crazy thing that average people just don't understand, is that we have to feed these prisons. These are businesses that need the people, and then there's other businesses that make the clothes. And I've been through these systems on both sides. I'm a son of a cop, but I've also been beat up by the cops. I've been arrested. I've been thrown in prison. Luckily, I do have lots of friends with money and pull, so that's
how
That's interesting. Not to go too off topic, but I've read you in the past. You consider yourself privileged.
Yes, I consider myself very privileged.
Yeah.
I got
based
a
on money,
education, private school education.
Yeah.
Is college, and
Yeah.
I get to travel.
And you've still been fucked up by the cops.
Still been beat up by the cops.
Yeah.
More than once. Once when I was a kid and once as an adult, and it doesn't stop. And people, I have friends who live in my same neighborhood who are white, who just don't understand. Like, why would the cops bother you? Why would the cops bother you? It's like it's not no reason. They have a quota.
Dude, I don't understand it. Well, you're right. No, I guess I do understand it. You just said it.
numbers.
Yeah.
They get fired if they don't make their quota, or they don't get bonuses. They don't get rewards. They don't get recognized. So,
you know what I say to that?
Coming straight from the underground. Young niggas got and not the other color, so police think they have the authority to kill a minority.
Because they kind of do. They kind of do, don't they?
Well, I think that's the other thing too, that quotas are bad in themselves, but the thing that makes them terrible is that when it's easy then to go out and round up black folk in Baltimore, rather than there's probably Baltimore's a big drug city. There's probably drugged out white folk too that you could be rounding up.
Probably.
you know, but you're not doing that. You know, it's probably drunk white folk out on the road, but the DUI or the stops on cars are so much higher on black folk in Baltimore, and it's because it's easy, because then you can you know, the systems are in place to then just make that go through, you know, rather than you stop the wrong white guy and he actually has the ability to fight you or whatever, you know. It's an easier target, and it's because we let it be, you know.
Yeah, and the prosecutors work with the system. But I know for a fact, I told you I have a lot of conservative friends, and I live in New York, so I have friends that work on Wall Street, and I have friends who, you know, are personal trainers at the gym, you know, black friends. My black friends, we go out. We're not bringing open bottles. You leave your weed at home. You smoke before and after, not not during your night out. My white friends have an 8-ball of coke, and they're not worried about a damn thing. Always.
Right.
Yep.
They're never worried about getting caught. My black friends, we don't have anything on us, and we're like, are you wearing Timbs or are you wearing dress shoes? Don't fuck up our night, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that difference alone is...
The rules are different.
The rules are different.
Yeah. That's damn.
There's no doubt. It's interesting you asked that question about, like, you know, can you feel white privilege? There is no doubt that if I'm out with my, you know, black and Latino friends, that I'm not gonna be the first one. If the cops show up, I'm not gonna be the first one.
It's one of the fringe benefits of having you in the band. It's like you drive.
We need somebody to talk to the cops. Hey, Ernie, you gonna get this?
Chris at the toes is totally different than Chris with the mic on stage. It's great.
and Chris with not dreads is very different too.
That's true too. Yeah, that's true too. Chris had
You wear that
dreads.
top hat when you talk to the cops, Chris?
I put on my Dave Chappelle white guy voice. What's the problem, officer?
What's the problem?
I feel like we need a sound effect for that.
The trouble?
Come on.
My stupid.
Mr. Overseer.
But no, but seriously, the rules aren't. I can't.
That hat is crazy, man. That's a crazy hat. What is that? That's nice. Is that a Mad Hatter hat?
Oh yes, it is. That's a handcrafted Mad Hatter hat.
That is, oh man, all right. And I've been noticing the Led Zeppelin thing in the background.
Hell yes, that was painted for my dad. That's one of my favorite pictures of me. That's why I put it up as my not cheesy. Remember when I had the cheesy one up on Google? I had the glamour shot.
Glamour shot, yeah.
That's what I haven't called it. It was a proper title.
Prom shot or something.
Yeah, we went out and we actually did a photo shoot. We did a JB Line photo shoot, and it happened, you know, that was like, we did a couple of solo shots, but when you actually look at it in the context of, like, you know, people sitting around having a discussion, it is not the right one. It's a good headshot, you know, it's good to feel like I'm an actor applying for parts, but if you want people to respect me as a person talking, that's not the right way to go.
And if you ever grow your dreads back, they'll fit in the hat.
Oh, man. There'll be a day. They'll be long and gray, but I can't wait to grow them bitches back.
Can you still grow them back, though? I don't know. I mean, they're all getting old.
Sure. My hair is big and strong.
Actually,
I'll never go bald. I'll go super gray soon, but
I'm gonna be great like
That's
MC.
our hashtag for the night. Never go bald.
What's the hashtag?
Once you go bald, you never go back.
Yeah.
once you go bald, it never goes back.
I can agree with that statement.
It's just the natural course of history.
Oh goodness,
Yeah.
oh goodness. But Jay, just getting back to the topic, that was great. So deprivatizing the PIC. What about cameras on cops?
I think that's a great idea. I'm all for it.
Are there
I
any
like it, except for
flaws? Because it seems like a great idea to. There you go. I like the idea as long as they don't cheat.
That's the thing. They can turn them off. And so many times so far in the places like Louisiana, I forget. I wish I could have brought that one, you know, up before we was talking about it. But you know, there was a female cop who shot a dude twice in the head because she literally turned the camera off right before she did it. And that's happened more than once. Just, you know, turn it off. Tick. And that's the thing. It doesn't make any sense if you can just turn it off. It's no longer a security measure.
All the time, and you can't be able to turn it off. That's how it would work.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you treat it like your gun.
Airplane.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can turn it off, I mean, what's the point of wearing a camera? right?
I agree. And the other thing is, so they got to bring it back.
There's a lot of dead people. Their parents are asking that right now because he's right. It happens very often. I post at least once a week. There's a situation where a cop has a camera. Well, we've seen it, you know.
But have we seen it enough that now we're starting to take accountability for this?
No.
You know, like,
No.
That's the problem.
Cameras are brand new.
Before Freddie Gray, there was the guy who was running away
that was fucked up.
and got shot in the back. But have you heard about that in the news at all?
We had that on camera. We had that on camera.
It was on camera, and it doesn't.
Now, what about that new app though? That new app, can you guys hear about this app that goes right to the you guys heard about this app, this phone app?
Yeah.
I've heard of apps in
Yeah.
general. Could you tell us more about the one you're talking about?
I can't think of the name of it. It's an app that if you suspect police brutality, it goes right to
Federal database.
You heard about this?
Yeah, I've heard about it, and
Wait, what does it do?
I saw it on Facebook.
it goes directly to a government database.
Yeah.
Really?
Really? So I mean, are we? I mean, with all the protesting and with all everyone being aware, is there what is the next step? What is the next step to combat racism and fix what's going on in the streets?
I don't know. Hillary Clinton says some cool stuff, and I don't even like her.
I don't like her that much either, but.
But she said she's
Rubber
gonna
pantsuits.
What?
We just make a
Continue.
You said some stuff about what?
She
Pantsuit.
said she's gonna address. She said that it is that it's obvious that our police systems do purposely target black males and kill black males, and we have to stop that, and we have to stop mass incarceration. And then Bill Clinton was a big part of getting prisons privatized and growing the industry, and he came out yesterday and said he admitted that he was a big part of that. And those two steps are huge. They put themselves out there to be accountable.
Yeah.
That is big.
I love Bill. I miss him.
Yeah. I'd like to think that what's going on with all this social awareness, that there is a way to affect change. Do you agree or do you not agree? Do you agree that
There has to be a fucking
discussion,
way, man. There has to be.
we've begun to see accountability, and like we're going to continue to control this till we have a system that works? Or am I off again?
No, I think it's good. I think one thing that we have to. This is something sort of off topic but on topic. I think one thing I've been hearing is this, long as we do it peacefully, I don't think anything that we can remember good in history has been achieved strictly through peaceful means.
That's true.
I can't think of anything.
Because if you don't make people uncomfortable, then what gets changed?
Yeah, why do they care?
Right.
Right.
That's exactly right.
Why would the news crew show up if somebody didn't break the CVS window?
And see, that's the only justification to me of Baltimore, and it's of the Baltimore, extremes of it. That's the only positive spin on it is, you know what? If they weren't doing this, we wouldn't even be talking about it. So, it can't be wrong, right? It can't be all bad.
It can be wrong and it's bad. It's a sad reality.
It's a sad reality. That's exactly right. But it is a reality that if they were not burning CVS for CNN to put on a 24-hour loop, none of us would be, it would be half as interesting a story.
Do you think that those means are worth the backfiring of what happens on social media? I mean, I've seen some animals, and I'm not talking about rioters or policemen. I'm talking about people on social media who kind of been treating the riots, the situation in Baltimore and the situation in Ferguson as almost like spectator sport.
Yeah, you bring them out, you get them out into the open.
Yeah,
That's
I
the best
agree.
thing to do. You get them out into those people who are not just normal like microaggressors. The people who actually raise this and have that hate in their heart, it comes out.
Yeah.
You keep prodding them along, and it has to come out. That's the only reason that the people are rioting is because we've been prodded and poked. You try to do this, try to talk, turn the other cheek. None of it works. So then you explode. Yeah. And so
that really is an example of. That really is an example of like privilege, of like whether or not you have privilege. If you're like on Twitter, as I saw one poster, like literally have a link to the Ferguson, like to the website where they were going to announce the Ferguson hearing, and literally go, "Here we go," as if anticipating that it wasn't going to be in anyone's good, in the victim's favor.
Yeah.
and B, that there was going to be just craziness in the streets, and it was literally just like, it was literally like sport to them, just like posting.
Yeah, I mean,
posting
social
pictures and
media
saying
really
like
does
Walmart's,
make it like.
what's that?
Say it again.
Posting
No, you go
pictures
ahead.
and saying like, oh, Walmart's having a fire sale, and it's like dark humor at the expense of an entire social system.
There is a lot of dark humor, a lot of voyeuristicness to it being a social media thing, and it connects us all in an immediate kind of way. And Twitter is like a crazy thing because you can see some dark shit. People like it. There's a veil that social media creates that people are down to say some ugly things on social media, and it's crazy.
In my inbox, but
Say it one more time.
they say it to me straight up in my inbox.
I believe it.
So, but the thing is, like, what are we gonna do without it? Like, the
Right.
civil rights, that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't seen the bus blown up or the people getting sprayed by fire hose and bitten by dogs. Like,
No,
nobody
that's
would have
right.
cared if there wasn't a violent aspect that people saw and had to form their opinions. I'm either gonna do the right thing or I'm gonna do the other thing,
Right.
But none of it happens without.
It is worth it.
The visuals are sad and they're sick and they're disgusting and people are going to use them in the wrong ways. But Rodney King, the last time, that's another time we had a big riot. Seeing Martin Luther King get shot and the pictures that they showing of him, Emmett Till, all caused riots.
Yeah.
Those all caused change.
Yeah, and when people putting themselves out there on social media and just showing how ugly, they themselves are, and one can only imagine the circle of people they hang out with. It puts it all out there for everyone else to be like, all right, well, it's there. Is that right? Is that wrong? What's going on? Like, why do you feel that way? If nothing else, it just puts everybody's shit out in the open so that we have to deal with it. So social media is changing how we, how the world deals with something as basic as like racism and white privilege and police brutality and stuff like that. The cameras, everybody filming and sharing, right on the spot. It's just like, hey, everybody can now see how bad it really is for some people and how ugly, some people really get. So.
I just wish there was some way, I don't want to use the word police, but I wish there was some way to document this. Like the guy who was literally like, here we go, deleted his Twitter account shortly after that. And I don't know if he claimed other reasons.
There was also another thing about there was this actual link to people who were acting racist online to expose them.
That's really wow.
To do what? To do what?
You can literally go right to their Twitter feeds or their Facebooks, or I mean, there was some stuff going on, or still going on to expose racists online. Definitely.
People who are acting racist. Hey, can you send that to me on the back end so I can put that in the pertinent link section of the write-up? I want people to go there.
Yeah, Ivan, there's another one where they give you the link and the number to the person's job.
Are you serious?
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. It's like
Send that.
And
Send
so
me
they
that.
tell you whether they got fired or not because they call the job. So,
That's cool. That's cool though. That's cool. I want to put that in a pertinent link section.
No, it's cool, but it is fucked up and personal in a way that social media, wouldn't exist without social media. That personal interaction. Hey, and I'm all for that kind of vigilante shit, but that's crazy.
Yeah, no, it does open up the door for people to misuse it, and I mean I hear you, but I'm still gonna put that up in the pertinent link section if I can find it. If I can find it, that's nuts. That's nuts. How's everybody feeling?
Good. Well, here I wanted to do two quick things real quick because we won't. I would love for us to do a part 3 to this next week. I don't know if that's. The group is feeling that idea, but we barely got to Baltimore. We talked so much about race in such an awesome way. We barely got to Baltimore, so there's more to talk about. But the big thing this weekend, there are 2 rallies going on Saturday and Sunday that I think we should at least mention. On Saturday, there's the Be More Youth Rise, and I'm pretty sure that OK Player is either sponsoring or having something to do with promoting that. So the Be More Youth Rise on Saturday, and then there's the rally for there's a rally on Sunday that Prince is playing at that I don't know the rally. Rally for Peace. So they're doing 2 different rallies in Baltimore this weekend. So,
Prince is playing there?
Say it one more time.
Prince is playing there?
Yeah, Prince is playing on Sunday. at the Rally for Peace.
Let's make sure we get those links for the write-up too. That'd be all right. Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Who else is playing?
But I know there's a lot. There's a big. The Saturday one had a bunch of seemed like either Baltimore related or just a few talents that I hadn't heard of. But it was a big hip hop presence at least on the Saturday one. I didn't hear much about who was playing on Sunday. Obviously, Prince was the big headline. That was all over the place. But I think that's a cool step forward because the biggest thing that worries me at any of these events, and it worried me before Baltimore, was that the conversation would drop, and that without events like this, without like scary events you can watch on television and people can talk about and can't help but talk about, the issue just disappears. And then that's the worst thing that could possibly happen. You don't solve it. It doesn't like keep needling you in the face. It doesn't go either way. It just disappears right back under the fold because that's what works for the status quo. That's what works for people who want to keep it in place. So I don't know what else Baltimore has planned, but I think they are an active city, and they were a powder keg from when this went off, and I'm eager to see the steps that they take going forward. So I'd be down for another one. Go ahead.
Who's the district attorney in Baltimore?
What's her name? Mosby?
Mosby?
Yeah.
She's from Boston. Just want to give Boston a shout out. She's from Dorchester.
Yeah. She's BC Law.
Heavy heat, man.
Yeah.
Is she really?
She's from Dorchester. Went to Dover Sherburne High School, Metco.
Oh man.
35 years old, so she's our brethren.
Yeah.
No,
support, man. She's getting heavy fire this week, and it's going to keep coming. And it's coming from the Baltimore Police Union. They're going at her hard, and I don't know, man. I would not want to be in her shoes, and I think she took a big step.
She took a big risk, but it is a big step.
Whoa.
It's a huge risk for her, but I mean, what's up? What happened?
Oh no, I was just on Facebook, and dad calls cops on son to teach him a lesson. Cops shoot son dead. Did you hear about this? No.
Jesus.
Lesson learned, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. But no. She's in a tough position. I think it's a big risk that she took. I think a lot could go wrong for her, but I think she was very brave. I mean, I don't know. I mean, did she have no choice?
Well, she had a choice.
She had a choice. She could have done nothing.
Yeah, no,
she could have done nothing, as it usually happens in cases of police brutality. It was a big step, and the big thing that the police union is calling her out for is that she, unlawful arrest, that she might have not been in the right in the charges that she filed. So it's not like it's without risk,
Yeah. No, I hear you. But yeah, no, Boston. Shout outs to Boston. That's awesome. BC Law, I believe, too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's what's up. Anyone else have
While
any?
We're talking about
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. I think just one last thing while we're talking about the Baltimore PD and their assault on Mosby and their public their Twitter hashtag is @FOP3. Any kind of ill will you want to send their way, that's their hashtag for the Baltimore Police Union. That's all I got. Because they're right now they're on like a campaign of there's a really weird picture of like two kids in their parents' police uniforms, and it's all hashtag My Life Matters and All Lives Matter. And it's kind of sickening to see a police union go on a marketing campaign like that.
Social media marketing.
Not the first time.
Kind of. It's weird. Say it again.
Yeah.
Definitely not the first time they've done stuff like this.
No, of course not, and it keeps happening. Like Darren Wilson's, fundraising, and obviously the police union is doing big GoFundMe campaigns for now they call them the Baltimore Six. But I can't even say that I don't understand it, but it's like a weird perverted thing that like you're gonna put out this marketing. Now we have to spin this that we're police are in the right. It's weird to me. I think so. I think we should just Twitter bomb them. So.
What's the hashtag?
Their thing is @FOP3. So @FOP3.
FOP3.
By the way, FAP is internet slang for masturbating, so I don't know if that helps anybody.
Well, FOP, F-O-P also has meaning too.
Is that weird?
Composite connotation, so that's also funny.
Oh man. Hey, if you got an opinion, that's where you send it. At
That's right.
FOP3, yeah. Let them know how you're feeling. And we know how we're feeling over here. Chad, how you feeling?
I'm feeling really good that I made this. I feel just worse I didn't make the first podcast, and I would love to have a part 3 of this.
Yeah. Shout outs to Dr. Chris Paddock for the first podcast. We love you, Chris. That was an excellent discussion. Just really got into Baltimore, and I had a feeling, Chris, that this would happen. The first podcast I knew would be Baltimore heavy, and I knew this one would kind of, go beyond Baltimore. But I do agree. I mean, I'd like to get back for a third and then some. I mean, it's Baltimore and beyond. Let's
why not, man?
Let's keep hammering away. Jason, any final thoughts on your end?
No, I'm happy to do a third discussion. I think it's important to keep this conversation going to raise awareness and affect social change. So let's do this.
Mr. Elaine Davis, I want to thank you for being with us tonight. I know we're an interesting bunch to deal with. We are the oddballs. We are all oddballs. Hashtag. But our belief, our vision with these podcasts, and hopefully then some, hopefully beyond, was really to foster discussion. And we understand, for everybody out there on the internet, we know that our views are our views. And we don't always agree amongst each other. We know that everybody out there is not going to agree with what we're saying, but these issues are very important. They're affecting the way tons and tons and tons of people that we all love live every day. And again, the first very critical, very achievable step that we can take is to just talk about it. Get over our fears, get over our insecurities, get over our ignorance, and really just put it out there and, hey, start bridging those gaps, because once we bridge those gaps, we can actually affect change, we believe. And Elaine, sorry, you're excellent. I thought you'd be an excellent guest for this, because that's what you do all the time, every day, all day. You are out there talking about it, and it's not just race and police brutality. You're outspoken in general, so you got something on your mind. You put it out there. But in this country, obviously, those things come and play a lot, and you're always on it. And I've learned a lot from you, so I really want to thank you for coming on tonight. And is there anything on your mind that you want to put out there that maybe we didn't get a chance to touch on because the discussion went other ways, that you want to hit us with now before we get out of here?
No, I think this was great. Thank you for having me on your podcast. And I just want to say, just don't wait until a black dude's around to talk about the race stuff.
Right.
True.
Right. And I think I said this in a prior cast, not necessarily the last one on Baltimore, but the more so than anybody, I believe that white people in this country need to talk about it, so that we can start getting somewhere. Because I think minorities deal with it every day. So we're always I don't want to say we're always talking about it, some more than others, but it's part of our reality. And I'm a light-skinned minority, and I did touch on this in the very last cast. I've felt both privilege work for me and against me for being a light-skinned Puerto Rican in this country, and I would feel it in Puerto Rico too. It's not just America's issue. Like, Latin America's mad racist too. Dark folk have it really, really bad down there too. Black folk have it really, really bad down there too. Even though they're of the same culture, of the same country, of the same ethnicity, speak the same language. So it's a global issue. But yeah, I believe that given the structure of how this country's set up, white folk, you need to talk about it. You can't be afraid to talk about it. You can't you can't not want to go there all the time. Everybody has obviously their moments where they just need to be, and they don't necessarily want to get into a heated discussion. But don't make that Don't make that the status quo. Like, we got to go there sometimes. So let's go there. Yeah, I mean, and with that, I know we've read a little poetry in the past cast. If if you guys don't mind, I'd like to read that Grand Fury poem that we alluded to at the beginning of the
Good
cast.
poem.
Just,
Good poem.
yeah, kind of bring it full circle, and then we'll go from there and tune it out. So we want to thank everybody out there on the interwebs for listening. We hope that we hope that you're at least listening and that you're getting something positive out of this. And again, just go out there and talk about it. Let's figure it out. Let's stop ignoring it.
Yeah.
Again, Alan, Elaine, thank you for coming. Oddballs, it's been great tonight, and this is Grand Fury.
Boom.
Can we take a moment of silence to reflect, pray, grieve, rest on those who could not breathe and whose last breath, choke, gasp, death, were taken way too soon and systematically were doomed? Can we take another moment to dissect? Hands up, shots, all the forces in play that led to conflicts. Race, class, cops, where law enforcement must enforce the status quo by using force. Let's take a moment to outright reject, serve and protect. That officers treat us as citizens, we're not privileged. And know there are no bigger cowards than cops who abuse their power. Can we take another moment to undress, strip, tear down the fallacy of all created equally, white, black, brown? Are we not more prone to die or live much more stressful lives? Now let's take a few more moments to protest, rise up, march this injustice and force our nation's interests. Petition, vote, bark, to realize that our lives no longer will be qualified by our skin or by the number of arrests since birth set up to lose. We all deserve a shot at happiness, so damn the boys in blue. We know it's dangerous and cold, but we tried peace, and still we're told that when we're killed, it's justifiable. We matter less. But we're sick of all these untried homicides, innocence presumed. How many unarmed black men need to die at the hands of these goons? As criminal as crime can be, corruption by the grand jury, it all results in public grand fury. Fight breeds hope. These moments watershed 'cause we shed tears. New Jim Crow. And Lady Liberty now lives in fear, 'cause she knows that our rights are violated and that we'll no longer take it. Thus we're seizing all these moments, that's our creed, though we may bleed and choke. 'Cause no longer will you push or murder me. We're pushing back, revolt. Our unity is strong. With all our brothers we will bond, 'cause every race is every man. We stand as one. Home, brave, free. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Sound of the funky drummer. Music in your heart, cause I know you got a soul.